1 o'clock Eastern on the dot. So I do like to start on time promptly, but we'll kind of just start with some regular housekeeping items before we dive obviously too far into strategy. So welcome everyone to the next webinar in our series with NSPRA, Proven Strategies to Calm Negative Noise on Social Media. I am fairly certain that everyone who is here today has dealt with plenty of storms over the past 365 days. And probably, we've all been dealing with it for years, as long as social media has been around, but I'm sure the past year did a number on just about everyone. So hopefully we can give you some strategies and share some positivity today to keep you going through the rest of 2021 and your careers here. As a reminder, this is being recorded. So if you have to leave for any reason, your dog needs to go out, your kids are home, you need to run to a meeting, put out another fire at your district, totally fine. This is being recorded. You'll get the slide deck and the recording in your inbox by about lunchtime tomorrow. So no fret there. Please feel free to ask questions throughout this webinar. We will do our best to hold questions until the end. However, if something pops up that feels really pertinent, we'll interject, but we do usually just try to wait until the end, just for the sake of time. We have a lot of great strategies and information to share today, and we just want to make sure that we get through all of those. So I know those are usually the biggest questions. Is it being recorded and when am I going to get it? So yes and yes tomorrow. We'll wait here just another couple minutes for some more folks to join. But we're excited to see so many people joining in on this topic.
What I really like to see is the representation from so many regions in the U.S. So we're going to be talking about storms, not weather-related storms, but just all the storms that we deal with as community managers. And sometimes those can be very geographical, depending on what weighs in. So I actually think that this kind of representation that we're seeing really is going to lend itself well to the day, even if, especially as we do some sharing of some things that may be occurring across the country. So I'm seeing Grand Rapids, Michigan, Texas, Iowa. So Maggie from Jeffco Public Schools in Colorado. Ontario, Canada, welcome.
Awesome. I think I just realized that I was not sharing my screen. So I believe I'm sharing my screen now. Can everyone?
Yes.
Okay. You'd think after a year of virtual meetings, something would go off without a single technical difficulty, but now it's almost to the point where you're used to doing it that I feel like it's almost easier to forget something because you're not sitting there with you're like, okay, did I do this? Did I do this? Did I do this? So I'm assuming everyone can now see my screen. Awesome. Well, welcome everyone. Let's go ahead and get started. I know there's plenty of people still chiming in where they're coming in from. I have a neighbor over here in Birmingham, Alabama. Those tornadoes are coming my way and I'm going to be seeking shelter in my house without a basement. I don't know why they don't put basements in these southern houses where there's nonstop bad weather. So confusing to me. But regardless, we are going to be talking about storms today, tornadoes, hail, and all of that. But like Crystal said, not in regards to the actual weather, but to what you guys are dealing with on social media. So today we're going to discuss proven strategies to calm that negative noise on social media and hopefully bring some more positivity into your community. My name is Mia. I work on the marketing team here at Finalsite, and I'm joined by Crystal Molesky of Stevenson High School in Illinois. Crystal, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Certainly. Well, welcome everyone. And I'm really looking forward to this session. I have been the social media specialist at Stevenson, and I'm now the communications coordinator. And storms have definitely been part of our landscape, especially during the last year. So I know I've been looking forward to sharing some strategies with Mia. One of the things we talked about is some of you may be coming here to get some strategies, share some strategies that are working for you, and sometimes even some reassurance. I think this has been a really difficult time for many people. So.
Awesome. Well, Crystal, I'm so happy to have you here. I had so much fun preparing this presentation for you. I don't think I've had the pleasure of meeting any of you on one of these webinars yet, but my name is Mia. I'm our Director of Demand Generation at Finalsite. I've been at Finalsite in the world of school marketing communications for over 7 years now. Prior to that, I worked in TV as well as a wedding cinematographer. For now, I'm located in Columbus, Georgia, so over here in the southeast region of the US, battening down the hatches with many of you other Southern schools this afternoon. So really happy to discuss this topic. Social media is really where I started in my marketing career, and it's something that I still enjoy to talk about and learn about because it's something that's just always changing. And I feel like that makes it really exciting in some ways, but also obviously absolutely terrifying. So quick, one more housekeeping update. If you were registered for last week's webinar on no-fail strategies used by the top 10 public school websites of 2020, have no fear. That live webinar has been rescheduled for March 24th at 1 p.m. Eastern. All of you are already re-registered, and we should have already sent you that confirmation email, and it should be in your inbox. So if it's not in your inbox, shoot us a note and we can make sure that gets over to you. And of course, if you haven't registered for that amazing webinar yet, you have one last opportunity to finalsite.com/NSPRA21. Now, as I mentioned, Crystal and I have a lot to dive into today, aside from those storm analogies and metaphors. We have 4 key areas that we want to talk about. That first area is preparing before a storm. So what do you need to have in place for when something negative happens on social media? How to anticipate the storm. So how to embrace and use those digital listening tools in order to kind of see and forecast what might happen next. We're going to dive a little bit into how to keep the waters calm no matter what. So some tips on driving the narrative within your community using your own messaging, as well as content from community ambassadors. And lastly, we'll talk about that heated topic, and probably the reason why many of you are here today is how to weather the storm with some organizational strategies for managing those comments when they come in when they're negative. So Crystal, I'm going to turn it over to you for part 1. Now, I'm controlling the slide deck and Crystal's talking, so bear with us as we move through, potentially awkwardly at times, to make sure we go from one slide to the next. But Crystal, I know in preparing before the storm, aside from social media guidelines and all of that, you said in preparing for this that you like to say a lot of positive mantras to kind of keep you going in anticipation of the storm, right?
I do. And I think I didn't realize it until this year. And there were definitely some mornings that I said some things to myself, such as, people are angry, they're upset, they're scared, they're not angry at me, they're just angry at the world. I know there's another mantra I have, and as we're sharing some of these mantras, I would invite anyone that is tuning in, if there's something that kind of helps get you through the day or has helped get you through this year, please share it. Even if it's just an emoji of how you felt this past year, that works too. But something else that I think about when I think about social media, especially commenting, and I have used this mantra or this explanation a few times in my organization, because everybody loves to get the positive comments on social. And when there's a negative comment or a concerning comment, sometimes there are some people who would like to have those deleted. I actually welcome them a little bit. And one of the mantras that helps me is I tell myself, I would rather have a parent tell me a concern, and even if it's on social, where I have an opportunity to address it, rather than just saying it at the bus stop without me having the opportunity to either know what their concern is, correct some potentially misinformation, or learn about what their concerns are. So I'm hearing some other mantras that people are sharing here. Mia, anything that strikes you that you're seeing?
Well, I'm a huge Parks and Rec fan, so I love what I hear when I'm being yelled at is people caring loudly at me. Nothing is ever personal, persistent, pervasive, or perfect. That one definitely resonates with me as a perfectionist. Everything comes from a place of pain and fear. So lots of Some good mantras. Continue. If there's anything that gets you through your day, we'd love to have you share them in here. I feel like everyone could use a little lift as we head into the spring over here. So feel free to pop those into the chat, throughout the presentation or as they come to mind. So that being said, aside from mantras for our own mental health and sanity, Crystal, what else do we need to prep for the storm?
Well, there's many things that we can prepare for. One of the things that really helped me this year is making a differentiation between oppositional storms or crises and non-oppositional storms. So, I mean, maybe in our mind of minds a couple of years ago, if we thought about a pandemic, it might be considered a non-oppositional storm. Who wants a pandemic? You would think there would be universal support that that would be a non-oppositional support or storm. But many people here have probably experienced issues with and concerns and comments regarding remote learning and hybrid learning and closure of schools and cancellation of activities. So that pandemic that we never imagined could have ever happened is probably a great example of an oppositional storm. So you may have faced situations such as a school board election, especially a contested one, perhaps a referendum. There's some things that we can't anticipate. There might be a natural disaster in your area, water outages, mechanical failures. Some of these we can prepare for, some of them are hard. So I think this year especially, I kind of just want to give a shout out to all the community managers, because I think this has really been a very challenging year for many people, not only for what people are doing at work, but many people that are tuning in may have also had to deal with some personal crises or family members. So that's part and parcel of all of our jobs, but this has been a very unusual year where we're not only maybe dealing with our own fears and concerns and maybe health issues at home, but we're also trying to guide our school districts through this type of crisis. So I think we just really need to give a shout out to everyone here. And this is a safe group. And I think, me and I talked about this, just really what an unusual year it has been. But what can we take from this going forward, and talking about how to deal with some of the negative noise. So two things we're really going to concentrate on today. And in the next slide, I kind of outlined although we can talk about preparing graphics in advance and having a day where you practice crisis communication, and there's many different strategies, there's two areas that we'd like to do a little bit of a deep dive with initially, because they're actionable. We're just picking two just to try to not overload your plate. But we really want to talk about guidelines that could be established in advance and relationships that can be established that could help you weather any kind of storm. So these are some of the things that we're going to be talking about. But first, we're going to do a little bit of a deep dive into social media guidelines. So one of the things I'm going to do is drop into chat the social media guidelines I have. I am going to drop this into chat. So these are the social media guidelines that we have at Stevenson. I'm not going to say that they are the be all end all. I will definitely tell you I've learned a lot in this past year, and have these guidelines been modified a few times? They certainly have, because there were things that happened I could have never anticipated. So what I'm going to do today is just kind of go through, if you want to take a look at our guidelines in depth, the link is in the chat. We are a Finalsite family, so you'll see that that domain, because it's a doc that is uploaded to our Finalsite. But there are some things that I just want to kind of go through. If you already have social media guidelines, great. If you're thinking of developing them or are thinking of revising them, possible things to consider. And certainly as I'm going through this is a community presentation. So if there's some things that you've learned or some lessons learned that you would really recommend others consider when they're putting their guidelines in, please put that in chat. So one of the first things that I want to outline is you don't have to go this alone with your guidelines. You probably already have a code of conduct or some other documents that have been highly vetted at your organization. And I would highly suggest tuning into those, referencing those, obviously making sure whatever you have in your guidelines is consistent and congruent with those guidelines. And certainly if there are any stakeholders within your organization, maybe it's your dean of students or your student services counselor that you may need to call on if there's a student that is acting outside of these guidelines, obviously bringing them into the conversation before you post them, so that if anything is actionable in the future, you've got that band of support already established. So I have listed a few things here that are sort of in our content guidelines that relate to that. And I think one of the big things that people talk about is allowable comments. And I believe that that's on the next slide within your social media guidelines. I didn't put all of our allowable comments here because there's a lot that are allowed and a lot that are not allowed. But I just put a little bit of a snippet of a portion of our guidelines in terms of what we don't allow. And I have to tell you, this summer, this was almost my full-time job. I don't know if there's a raise of hands out there for anybody else that was moderating. I had Instagram. Instagram is very huge at our school, and I had countless Instagram posts with 700, 800, 850 comments that I had to weed through. A lot of profanity, a lot of people that were upset, and that's where those mantras come in. I had to kind of remind myself not to take it personally, not to, try to put a little bit of a wall between myself and the comments, but the comments had to be moderated because there's things we do not allow. I won't go through anything, but everything on here, but two thoughts. Obscenities. It sounds simple, but it can be very complicated. Your organization, you may want to take a deep dive into what is considered obscene. You may want to have a list. I know I have added, I have our Facebook profanity filter, I think, set to medium. And then I've added quite a few words to that that are not included in there to try to, help with some of the automatic moderation that Facebook will do. But, even having a list of what your organization considers obscene, because it may differ, if it's a private or public or school, maybe with a real religious affiliation, there may be a difference. Something that I hadn't encountered before that I needed to add here is alternative spellings, abbreviations. Our students are very creative. There's a lot of symbols involved in words, and we know what their meaning is. So I had to kind of go with applied meaning. One of the problems that I really ran into this summer is how to report a concern, which is on the next slide. And I found it's so interesting because Mia's going to be talking about different communication styles and expectations and patterns with different generations. But I was really astonished this summer how many people think that social media is a viable way to report a concern. Like they think it's an official way. Like I have a concern and I have posted it in a comment in a thread of 800 concerns, but I've reported it because I posted it on social media. So that was something that I had to quickly make a modification for our social media guidelines to reiterate what are the official and recognized methods for reporting a concern, and explicitly say that social media is not one of them. That also comes into play because we're not moderating our comments all the time. We have we use the Finalsite forms section on our website, and we have some forms for anonymously reporting a concern, and those get distributed immediately to our internal stakeholders. And I had to really reinforce that requirement for reporting a concern. Another really interesting phenomenon that's occurred is direct messaging, which is on the next slide. We've always had direct messaging. It had never been used like it was used this summer. And it was really overwhelming. I know as a community manager, I had to make a shift because I was used to using my phone to answer some direct messages. And I really had to go to the desktop version within Facebook especially for Instagram. Visually, I couldn't see everything. There were very long threads of comments. And again, I had to reinforce that direct messaging is not a way of reporting a concern. But there was a lot of education that I had to go back and forth with. Another interesting thing as we talk about establishing some procedures before a crisis is giving some thought to what your kind of unofficial cut and paste response philosophies are within your organization. And I will be real here. I got called out by a number of parents who were comparing my responses on direct messaging. And Mia's eyes just got really big. So it was a tough summer, I will tell you. Cindy's just saying direct messaging has been driving her crazy too. So I modified the bio in our Instagram account to say direct messages will be answered within 24 hours. I had to remove the immediacy of the expectation that they were going to get an immediate response because this just was physically impossible. One of the things that really helped me was, I think I mentioned this to our principal, and he said, "Oh, Crystal," he said, "I use a copy and paste all the time, with parents." So I felt a little better about it, especially in a crisis. Many times you have sort of vetted responses that your organization has approved, and certainly you can modify them a little bit, but in the end, it's hard to be incredibly creative in saying the same thing over and over to parents. So that's something to consider. And the last point, and I think I've got a couple slides on this, is talking about not only naming conventions for accounts, and I'm talking about unofficial accounts, so maybe club accounts or student related accounts, but also acceptable logo use. So I don't know if anyone encountered these on Instagram, these sort of T accounts and some of them were really very difficult this summer, where there were unofficial accounts popping up using our school name, using our school logo as a thumbnail. And really what they were doing was online bullying of other students. And so if Mia will advance to the next slide. Excuse me, actually it was this past slide. I wanted to share, I don't know why this worked, but the use of the Stevenson logo by unofficial accounts is not permitted. It worked. And if you go to the next slide, I've got a screenshot of an Instagram direct message and I can't even count how many accounts that I had to report and try to shut down. And when I was trying to address our logo use, I used this, and I was actually really kind of pleasantly surprised at some of the responses that I got, and including an apology. And this was by like quite a rogue account that was posting some really kind of not nice stuff. And they were very apologetic and they changed their logo. But if you have an opportunity to take a look at the trademark of your logo, especially if you have to make a claim against someone using your trademark, it would be very helpful. But I wasn't in that position, but this statement, for whatever reason, had some kind of secret sauce to it, and it really helped me shut down quite a few accounts. So I'm seeing quite a few comments on here. We're going to be saving pointed questions till the end, but and Mia may pop in every once in a while if she sees some comments that are, really pertinent and related, to this. But I really appreciate everyone sharing some of their experiences. Hopefully it's kind of healthy maybe too for you to kind of get it out. And then like Cindy did have the T accounts. So I know other people experience this too. So thank you very much for sharing your experiences. And if the comments are any indication, you are not alone. All of us experience some of these things. So the next portion that I want to go to besides social media is talking about relationships. So I mentioned, getting buy-in from some of your stakeholders with your social media accounts, but developing those internal relationships I find to be really key. So for example, with some of those T accounts, I know our social services and our deans were very upset, or would be very upset if they knew about them. So in the thick of it, when I was really having a problem with those T accounts, I sent an email to our deans, our counselors, and I said, if you have time, this is going on, students are getting bullied, this is how you report the account. And so I kind of developed a ban, and I have to tell you, when my experience and what I've read is that if quite a few different people are reporting that an account is spam or is functioning against community guidelines, there's a greater chance that that account will go down. And I'm proud to say I got a lot of those accounts taken down, but it was with the help of some of my fellow patriots who helped me in there. But I wouldn't have had that ability if I hadn't developed those relationships before, this type of event. So, I have a social media directory that I have on our website. I probably use it more for myself so that I can give attribution when I'm, commenting on or sharing a post. I'm a big user of private and public Twitter lists. I'm going to be talking about that. We had a pretty interesting phenomenon with external agencies, but actually before I go to that, Mia, if you want to advance the slide. I don't know if people here use private Twitter lists. Mia and I were talking about them. Just to give a quick overview, you don't have to follow someone on Facebook in order to add them to a list. So so this is a small portion of the Twitter list that I have for Stevenson, but you can see there's some lock boxes next to some of those where I have them that are private. Some are public, some are private, but you can use these Twitter lists however you need. And it's a really great way to kind of enhance your relationships, I know with people. That's just one area on Twitter. Me and I are going to be getting to some other things with some other social platforms too. So that's one thing that I have found to be very helpful. Collab with external agencies. And I'm going to get to this. No, it's fine, Mia. Before I get to the success stories, we had, and I didn't initiate this, an administrator from one of our local park districts asked to have a lunch with our school, the library, some other neighboring village administrators. And it really was to help prepare for crisis communication, which I thought was phenomenal. We met over lunch, we established a private Facebook group, and the goal, we haven't used it that much, was to sort of have an outreach if in case any one of us were having a difficult time or needed to get some urgent messaging out. We had some kind of pre-baked relationships, contact information, and that's a lovely thing to establish if you have a chance. I wanted to share one other example in terms of developing relationships. And this is something I used to send out, a monthly social media highlights. It had nothing to do with what I did on social. It had everything to do with me giving shout outs and applause to what other people within our organization were doing on social, and as a way to build them up, encourage their activity, and also to shine a spotlight on some really good best practices that people are using. So a lot that we unpacked in there. We're going to be kind of moving to part 2 and talking, this is going to be a little bit shorter. We're going to be just talking about anticipating the storm and some digital listening tools. So, on the next slide, just some things obviously to keep an eye out for. I have found things on Twitter. There was a kind of a militant group. I'm not sure if that's the best way to explain it. Nothing affiliated with our school, but they used words like, we are recruiting students who want to, and they were meeting on our school grounds in the parking lot after school. Well, finding that and being able to send that to one of our deans of students who could alert security, fabulous, so trying to keep an ear out. But how do you keep an ear out? So on the next channel, I've listed a few dashboards for listening. These are relatively simple. And this is a point I would really like to encourage. If there's any digital listening tools that you really like, please list them. I'll be honest, there's some fabulous ones. Some of them are like $500 a month for a subscription. I did not include those because that's not in the budget. But Hootsuite, setting up lists. I don't know if anyone uses Sprout Social. I'm an eClincher user. I always like those kind of small startup kind of accounts. Facebook Business Manager. There's some other ones in here that you can see in, if Mia goes to the next slide, I've got a Hootsuite on this one, but the next board, eClincher is a tool I can use and I can sort through. I may get to my desk in the morning and there's 100+ comments to wade through. And especially if it's a thread of 800 comments, I physically can't do this, but a dashboard can help me cut through the noise. I can filter something specific and try to find any of those, I call them my problem children. I mean that not as a person, but events and issues and obscenities and different things that I really need to find quickly. And I find that these lists go on. And Mia, you had some other things that you wanted to, share in terms of listening on some other channels.
Yes, I know we just spoke about those private Twitter lists, and thank you to Josh who answered Allison's question about how to actually go ahead and create those Twitter lists. So those are really great for keeping track of what people are saying. Some ways to listen on Instagram and Facebook that are totally free as well. Something that I think a lot of schools don't realize is that people can tag you at your school location, maybe even if they're not physically at your school. But it's a good way to keep an eye on what people are saying about your school. And I know we're going to talk a little bit about ambassadors later, but it might be a really good opportunity to listen and see who some of your biggest ambassadors are and who's saying really positive things about your community on a regular basis. And you can enlist those individuals in one way, but it might also be a good way to keep an eye out for any negative or photography or posts that aren't necessarily part of your brand and part of your message that you'd want to see taken down. So on Instagram in particular, if you search for your school or district's name or any of your individual schools in your districts, there is a location option for them. And I highly recommend to just peruse that location and just see what's there. On Facebook as well, again, if you don't have a dashboard for listening tools, you can go ahead and search for certain names or certain schools in your district and search for all posts that are public within a certain city. So here you're able to kind of see, maybe if a particular mom who's always giving you a hard time is posting on her Facebook page about your district, and if she's public, you'd be able to see that. Additionally, if you are a member of any of those local mom groups or groups in your community, you can also filter and see comments that are happening about your teachers, your school, your board members in those groups, as long as they are either public or in a group. Now, one thing that we did not mention here, and it kind of goes back to the topic of obscenities and other content, is if you're a Finalsite client and you use our Finalsite feeds feature, it is not a free feature. It is an upgraded feature to the normal Finalsite feeds social media module. You can actually implement moderation there as well. So you can see if people are using certain words or certain phrases or abbreviations. And if they're also using your school's hashtag or your school's handle, you can keep an eye on them that way as well. And also, if you're pulling that social media content into your website, you can automatically exclude it as well. So we also have a tool that allows you to listen and kind of also delete any of those posts that might contain content that's harmful to your school's brand or message from at least your website, and feeds that way and helps you identify them there as well. So that's another tool you can use for monitoring if you are a Finalsite client. All right, Crystal, anything else on keeping your ear to the ground before we dive into keeping the waters calm the best we can?
No, I think we're good. The only thing I'm going to put into chat is Holly McCaw asked if there was if I could have a link for our social media directory. So I just added that to the chat.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Crystal. So I do want to be conscious of time and fly through this as quickly as possible. But what I want to do for the next few minutes is take a step back and take a step away from the negativity and all of what social media has been used for in the past year, and take a step back and think about, well, what social media actually intended to be. And social media was never intended to be a platform or a podium for you to share every single thing that's happening at your district. Social media, from the day it was created, from the first Facebook, or my gosh, even MySpace, it was a place to connect your community, and it was a place to focus on positivity. And yes, everyone is going to talk. Everyone in your community is going to have the negative Nancy's, the people who always leave negative comments, who are having a bad day, who might not even be a parent in your community, but just they're out on the internet and they're taking their anger out. And those people exist everywhere. And they're not just leaving those comments on your school's page, they're also potentially leaving them on the local restaurant pages and the local small businesses pages. As Crystal said, sometimes it's not you, it's just someone's having a bad day. That being said, there is a lot that you can do on your end to help control the narrative, to help ensure that you're putting out as much positivity into that social media universe as you possibly can. So I want you to take a step back, and I want you to remember that you are in control. You are in control of what to post. You are in control of where you post it, and you are in control of when you post it. And all of this helps you orchestrate a very fine-tuned, careful narrative that allows you to hopefully facilitate more positivity in your community than negativity. Now, how exactly do you do this? The first thing is by following the 70-20-10 rule. This is a basic rule of social media that so quickly we all lose sight of because we're so busy trying to post every single update that we're posting on our website and sending to our mobile apps and our text and our notifications, also on social media. That has never been a best practice and never will be a best practice. And I think when we just take a step back and we remember that social media isn't the place where we are airing every single piece of our laundry, and it's a place where we tell good stories and we elevate the positivity, all of a sudden we have the ability to completely change what people are talking about on social media, or at least what we have the ability to empower them to talk about. So on a regular basis, 70% of your content should be engaging or entertaining, 20% should be shared from other sources, only 10% should be self-promotional. Now, what does that look like in terms of your content? It means 70% of the content that you're sharing. Let's say you post 10 times on a weekly basis. That means 7 of those 10 posts should all be photos of students and photos of students either working remotely or being socially distant at school. It means we're highlighting our teachers, our students, our parents. We're posting engaging content. We'll get to this in a little bit, but some of your Gen Z or Gen X parents really love nostalgic content. So just throwing up a throwback Thursday or a flashback Friday to get them to engage and maybe share a memory or a fun time from before 2020. Only 20% of what you post on social media should actually be news. And that news can come from your school's website or other news sources that you might be sharing that you see deem as reliable. And then about 10% of the content should be asking your community for something. So to register for an event, to attend a meeting or something like that. So again, when we think about it in just that form of 10 posts, that's 2 per day on, Monday through Friday, only 2 of those posts should maybe bring controversy, maybe. And there's a lot that we can do to help tone that narrative down a little bit more. And I'll get to that in a second. But I also just want to talk a little bit about what to post. So typically all of our schools are dealing with 2 major sets of at least parents. I know that there are more people engaging on your social media pages than just parents, but parents, they're the ones who have the power to enroll or unenroll their student in your district, right? So we want to make sure they're the happiest. So for your older parents, Gen X, probably your parents of high schoolers, they want to see nostalgia content, and they want to be recognized for their efforts. The more shout outs we can give to parents in your community, the more positive that they're going to be, and they're going to help build that positive relationship with your school. Some of your younger parents, so your millennials, they want to see video content, and they want to see content that's created by their peers. In both cases, kids are their number one priority. So anytime you have the opportunity to talk about school safety, school opportunities, alumni stories, that's going to help create positive buzz in your community. Now, of course, and we're going to talk about this a little bit on in the last section here, is that both of these generations in particular in your whole community, they do desire quick responses and answers to their questions. And unfortunately, social media in a lot of ways has evolved into a customer service platform, and we need to be equipped and ready to help answer those questions on the fly. If you want to keep the conversation positive, do your best to always focus on people. Parents and stakeholders, they want to see their kids' classmates, coaches, they want to see alumni stories, who their kids can become, what parents have to say, content that their kids have created. I mean, if you're a district with a lot of elementary schools, I feel like you are so lucky, because I feel like there's like nothing cuter than all of the little the handprint art, recess, all the fun activities going on at your school. Like, it's so fun. You guys have so much content available at your fingertips here, and we can choose to post this instead. Where to post, again, you're in control here. So Facebook and YouTube are the most commonly used platforms, but Crystal and I were having an interesting discussion. Instagram is actually the most used platform at her district, which is for all high school parents, which is something that I would deem as really rare just based on the data. But if you are someone who has not a big staff, or you're managing this by yourself, choose 1 or 2. Don't feel the need to be on all 4 if that is unmanageable to you and that's keeping you up at night. If that's keeping you from spending time with your family and it's keeping you from having a normal level of mental health, tone it back. Turn off the comments on one of the platforms so you only have to manage it in one place. Or don't post that controversial piece of content on your Instagram. Just keep it on your Facebook, or maybe just keep it on your Twitter. So you're in control of where people can have conversations about your district, at least on your platforms. And remember that not everything has to go everywhere. And as a matter of fact, at the end of the day, it's, again, a bad practice to take the same piece of content and post it in all 4 places the exact same way. So a lot of the time, some of the things that we're feeling like we absolutely need to do it, isn't even a best practice, isn't even what social media platforms want you to do, or even how people are likely to engage with your content, right? So we just want to be sure that if we want to control the conversation, we need to be careful about where we post it. And that kind of goes into my next point of choosing very strategically of when to post. So we all know, Crystal and I were talking about this the other day, and I know you have an example later. It's like she posted a lovely picture of a girl wearing a mask. There's no one else in the picture, and it yields negative comments about how it's terrible that kids are back in school during a global pandemic. And it's like, okay, there's your version of the person just having a bad day. They probably comment that on everyone's Facebook page anytime there's someone out at a restaurant, maybe anything like that. So if we're going to post something that we know is going to cause negative comments, consider posting during off hours. So for example, I don't mean off hours when you're off. I mean hours when your parents are less likely engaged. So maybe posting during the workday, posting between 9 and 11 a.m. instead of those peak hours of lunchtime and after school. That way the post will naturally get less engagement, right? You might also want to wait until they've read it on your website first. So a tip that I've actually received from Andrea Gribble, and I love it, is to post it on your website, send it out through email, send it out through text, your mobile app, whatever, and then give people 48 hours to mull on it before you go and you post it on social media. That way they've already vented to their significant other. They've already had the conversations in their gossip groups. They've already texted their mom friends, and they've already gone on Facebook, Messenger, and chatted with their groups. So by the time you post it on your page, they might have already got their anger out, right? So maybe we're less likely to see it, because in a lot of times people are just venting because they're just as stressed as you are, and they need to be acknowledged for that. A stat that I cannot get out of my mind that I hope makes all of you feel better about what you post on social media is less than 1/5. So about 16% of parents want to see news on social media first, or even want to see news on social media at all. They don't see it as a reliable platform. So if news is something that's causing a lot of controversy, or updates are something that's causing a lot of controversy and negativity in your community, you don't even have to post it. No one wants to see it there anyway. Just call it a day, stop posting it there. The data says you don't have to, all right? So just take a breath, take it easy. Now, if you absolutely have to post something on social media, do it at a time where you can moderate. So if you post on a Friday afternoon, just be aware that you could be working all weekend. So, maybe posting something on a Thursday morning, or whenever you don't have a lot of back-to-back meetings, because also we don't want that fuel to get into let people kind of feed off each other in the channels. We want to be able to kind of nip that negativity right in the bud and keep it from, blowing out of proportion. Now, for content that is going to bring positivity, post during those peak hours and days, pin it to the top of your Facebook page so it's the first thing people see when they go there. And also kind of use it just like the way that you would sandwich a compliment, sandwich that negativity between two positive posts that might be a little bit closer together in timeline. So again, you have control over this. And I think that if you can put a little bit of a strategy in place, it's definitely going to help in the long run. Now, I want to fly through this section really quickly because I know we're getting close on time here. But again, keeping track of your parents on the large scale, the majority of them are going to be Gen X. For those of you with a lot of elementary schools in your districts, you might be dealing with a lot of millennial parents. So I just want to tell you a little bit about how these groups differ and how you can use different communication styles with them. Now, Gen X parents, or your older parents, parents of high school kids, they are the most likely to remain loyal. So in a previous article I read, they called these parents stealth fighter pilot parents. And they're kind of like, I know we have the poke the sleeping bear analogy later, but it's like, they're going to remain pretty much on your side and good. But if you do something that upsets them, that like sets them off, like they're done. Like you are going to hear about it, and you're going to hear about it on all of your channels, right? And so those are the people that we really want to tap into. We want to know who loves us in their heart of hearts and who might be on that tipping point to be unhappy. Now, something else to keep in mind with Gen X is they are very, very stressed. They are financially stressed. Almost half of them have been financially impacted by COVID. And this generation in particular is dealing with the financial support of their kids, as well as the financial support potentially of their parents. So again, when we think about those people having bad days, I see Jason commenting that he's crossed into older parents. I'm sorry, Jason. I guess I'm qualifying myself as a younger parent. Nothing personal. But what we want to do with Gen X in particular is we want to identify them from a satisfaction level. So we can do something as simple as an NPS survey, which is a simple one-question survey where you ask your community what their satisfaction is with your district. People who say 5 stars, those are people that you want to reach out to and immediately get them on your side to be your ambassadors. People who give 1s and 2s, we also want to reach out to those people and make sure that they don't become so unhappy that they're the people blowing up our Facebook pages. And we might be able to remedy the issue. Maybe there's been a clear miscommunication. Maybe there's something wrong. Maybe there's something we can fix. So those are like the two groups. We have our ambassadors and we have the people we immediately need to proactively reach out to. And sandwiched in the middle are those stealth fighter pilots that it's like, you could get them to be a 5, but we definitely don't want them sifting into that 1 and 2 area. So that's the area that we just want to be careful with as well. So an NPS survey can help you identify some of those brand loyalists who will speak out for you on social media. Now with millennials, I want you to be careful with this group. We love to talk. This is your generation that is most likely to be negative, but also most likely to be positive. So if you have millennials within your school community, if you have some of those younger parents, these are the parents that you're going to want to use to create ambassadors because they are more likely to talk. So those millennial parents can be your best friends. What we want to do with both of these groups, no matter what, is turn them into ambassadors for our school. So when there's negativity going on, maybe over the weekend or on a post that we feel like we can't control, we can enlist them to help us. But we can't just say, hey, it seems like you really like our school district and you're happy here. Can you do me this favor? Those relationships need to be built on empathy and trust and kind of a mutual understanding that, you know, we care about each other and we care about their kids. At the end of the day, that is all these parents care about. Um, so reaching out via social media